When you're a mother, there's a point where your heart stops being your own. It belongs to your child, their pain, their joy, their choices, and even their mistakes. I learned that truth the hardest way possible. My name is Margaret, and I was once a mother who would have given everything for her only son, Ethan. And, well, I did. For 27 years, I worked 2 jobs, one as a nurse in the day and one cleaning offices at night. Ethan's father passed when he was 10, leaving us with debts, a small house, and a promise I made to myself that my son would never feel poor, never feel left behind. I wanted to protect him from the world's cruelty, not realizing that sometimes too much protection breeds something worse: entitlement. Ethan was always bright, charming even. Teachers adored him, neighbors doted on him, and I was proud of how smart my boy was. But as he grew older, that brilliance turned into arrogance. He started believing the world owed him everything just because he was special. He'd look at my worn-out hands and sigh as if I embarrassed him. "Mom, you don't have to keep working like some peasant," he'd say, scrolling on his latest iPhone that I could barely afford. Still, I smiled. "It's okay, honey. I'm just saving for your future." He'd smirk. "My future is gonna be way bigger than this town." At first, I loved hearing that. Every parent wants their child to dream big. But somewhere along the way, his dreams stopped, including me. When he got accepted to a fancy business school in the city, I cried tears of joy and fear. It cost more than I could imagine, but I made it happen. I cashed out my small retirement fund, sold my late husband's car, and even took a loan against our house. Ethan promised me, "Once I graduate, I'll take care of everything, Mom. You won't have to lift a finger." I believed him. Every sleepless night, every aching muscle was worth it, because it was for him. But life doesn't follow promises. After graduation, Ethan got a job at a corporate firm. His texts became shorter, his visits rare. "I'm busy, Mom," he'd say whenever I called. Weeks would pass before I heard his voice. The last time he came home, he arrived in a rented BMW, wearing a suit that screamed confidence but eyes that carried disdain. He looked around the house like he was stepping into a time capsule. "Mom, you really haven't done anything with this place?" he asked, wrinkling his nose at the faded wallpaper and my old floral couch. "It's home," I said softly. "Your father built this with his hands." "Yeah, well, maybe it's time to move on," he replied, already checking his phone. That was the first time I felt like a stranger in my own house. Months went by. My health started to decline, the years of exhaustion catching up. I tried calling Ethan, telling him I wasn't doing well, that the doctor wanted me to get a small procedure done. He promised he'd visit soon, but he never did. Instead, he sent me a text. "Mom, don't be dramatic. You're fine. I'll send some money next week." He never did that either. That's when the loneliness started to hurt more than my illness. I'd sit by the window each evening, watching cars go by, imagining him stepping out of one. But he never came. The house grew quieter, emptier, and my hope began to fade. Until one day, I fell, right there in the kitchen. The world spun around me, and I remember whispering, "Ethan," before darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. A kind nurse said I had fainted from exhaustion and dehydration. No one had found me for hours. My neighbor, Mrs. Lee, had called an ambulance when I didn't answer the door for 2 days. Ethan didn't answer his phone that night, not even the next morning. I lay in that cold hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, realizing that the son I raised, the one I sacrificed everything for, couldn't even pick up the phone when his mother was fighting to stay alive. A few days later, he finally texted, "Mom, sorry, work's been crazy. You know how it is. Glad you're okay, though." No visit, no call, just a line of text. Something inside me shifted that day. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a strange, hollow calm, like the part of me that kept waiting for him had finally died. When I got discharged, I went home to an empty house and a mailbox full of bills. The mortgage payment was due. The savings I had left were nearly gone. And that's when I saw it, a letter from the bank. It was about Ethan's trust fund. the small inheritance his father had left, locked away until his 30th birthday. For years, I'd protected it, let it grow with interest, imagining it would be a gift from me and his father, something that would help him build his dream. But as I stared at that letter, something inside whispered, "He already got everything he ever wanted from you, Margaret. Now it's your turn." That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat at the table, the letter clutched in my hand, thinking about every time I begged him to visit, every promise he broke, every silence he gave me in return. And for the first time in my life, I thought, maybe it's okay to stop giving. Maybe it's time to take back what's mine. By morning, I had made a decision that would change everything. The next day, I went to the bank, the same small-town branch where I'd been a customer for 30 years. The tellers knew me by name. They knew my story. Mr. Collins, the branch manager, smiled when he saw me. "Mrs. Bennett, it's been a while. How can we help you today?" I handed him the letter. "I want to access my late husband's trust, the one meant for my son Ethan." He adjusted his glasses, scanning the document. "Ah, yes, the inheritance account. You do have joint authority on this until Ethan turns 30, as per your husband's will. Is something wrong?" I took a deep breath. "No, Mr. Collins. I just need to make some changes. I want to liquidate the trust." He looked surprised. "All of it?" "All of it," I said, steady as stone. He hesitated. "Mrs. Bennett, are you sure? That money was—" "I'm sure," I interrupted softly. My voice didn't tremble this time. "I'm the one who managed it all these years. I know what I'm doing." Within an hour, the papers were signed. The inheritance Ethan had been waiting for, his safety net, as he once called it, was now sitting in my account. The total amount was enough to start fresh somewhere else, to buy peace after years of disappointment. I walked out of that bank with a small smile. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my own life. That evening, I texted Ethan, "Call me when you're free. We need to talk." He didn't reply. Not that day. Not the next. 3 days later, I received a message from him. Not concern, not curiosity, just a request. "Hey, Mom, any chance you can help me with some cash? My bonus got delayed." I stared at the screen, feeling that old sting again. But instead of anger, a strange calm washed over me. I typed back, "I'll think about it." That night, I started packing. I took only what mattered. A few photos, my wedding ring, a small box of letters my husband wrote me before he passed. Everything else, I left behind. The memories in that house had turned heavy. I couldn't carry them anymore. I put the house up for sale quietly, through an old friend in real estate. Within 2 weeks, it was sold. Cash. The buyer was a young couple starting their first home. I didn't even negotiate the price. I just wanted closure. And before I left, I stood in the living room one last time, tracing my fingers over the doorway, where Ethan's height was marked each year. I whispered, "I hope you find yourself someday, my son." Then I locked the door and never looked back. I moved to a quiet coastal town 3 hours away, a small cottage near the ocean, humble, peaceful, with white curtains that danced in the sea breeze. I started volunteering at a local clinic, helping elderly patients with checkups. For the first time in decades, I worked for myself, not out of necessity, but out of purpose. Weeks went by without a word from Ethan. I figured he'd be too busy living his city life to notice I'd vanished. But one morning, my phone buzzed with his name flashing across the screen. "Mom, why haven't you been answering? I came by the house, it's gone. Where are you?" His voice was frantic, the same tone he used when things didn't go his way as a child. I took a breath. "I sold it, Ethan." There was silence on the line, followed by disbelief. "What? You sold our home? Without telling me?" "That's my inheritance, Mom." I stayed calm. "No, Ethan. It was our home. And your inheritance was your father's gift, one you never appreciated." He scoffed. "You can't just take my money. That's theft." "No," I said softly. "That's motherhood. I spent my entire life giving you everything, even pieces of myself. This time, I kept something for me." He yelled for several minutes, hurling words I never thought I'd hear from my son. selfish, crazy, ungrateful. I let him speak until he ran out of breath. Then I said the words that ended the conversation. You stopped being my son the day you stopped being my child. Goodbye, Ethan. And I hung up. For a long while, I stared out the window, watching the ocean waves crash against the rocks. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. I felt free. Days turned into months. My life fell into a rhythm. Morning walks by the sea, afternoons helping at the clinic, evenings spent sipping tea and listening to the gulls cry in the distance. I learned to enjoy silence again. I learned that peace doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from letting go. Then one morning, as I was tending to the small garden outside my cottage, a car pulled up. It was sleek, black, too polished for this quiet town. I knew before he stepped out. Ethan. He looked thinner, older somehow, like the weight of his choices had finally caught up. His expensive clothes didn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. Mom, he said softly, approaching me. I didn't move. Ethan. He glanced around the small cottage. So, this is where you've been hiding? I wasn't hiding, I said. I was healing. He sighed, rubbing his face. Look, I messed up, okay? I shouldn't have yelled at you. But you can't just take everything and disappear. That money was supposed to be my future. I smiled faintly. Ethan, I was your future once, and you threw me away. His jaw tightened. I didn't mean to. I just thought you'd always be there. I was, until you stopped looking back. He went silent. Then, in a tone that was less angry, more desperate, he said, Can I just come in? We can talk. For a long moment, I hesitated. Then I nodded. He stepped inside, looking around as if trying to understand the woman standing before him. There was no bitterness in my heart anymore, just a quiet acceptance. As he sat at my table, the same way he had as a boy, I realized something. Maybe this moment, this confrontation, wasn't punishment. Maybe it was a lesson, the kind only life could teach. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. You really took it all, didn't you? Yes, I said. And for once, Ethan, I didn't do it for you. He didn't respond, just lowered his gaze and whispered, I deserve that. He stayed silent for a long time. The ticking of the wall clock filled the room, every second stretching the space between us. I could see him struggling, pride warring with guilt, the same conflict that had built our distance over the years. Finally, he spoke. I didn't think you'd actually leave, Mom. I thought you were just angry. I smiled faintly, though my heart ached at his words. I was angry, Ethan, but mostly, I was tired. Tired of begging my own son to see me as human. He looked down, his fingers tapping the table nervously. You always talk like I don't care, but I did everything for my future. You wanted me to succeed, right? Yes, I said softly, but I wanted you to succeed with heart, not just money. There's no pride in a life where you step over the people who raised you. He frowned, trying to find words that wouldn't sound hollow. You don't understand what it's like in the city, Mom. Everyone's fighting to get ahead. I couldn't just stop and care? I interrupted gently. He sighed. Something like that. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. This was my son, the little boy who used to hug me after nightmares, who cried when his goldfish died, who promised he'd buy me a big house someday. Now he sat here, lost behind layers of ambition and entitlement. Ethan, I said after a moment, do you remember your father's words the day he opened that account? He shook his head. I was 12. He said, this money isn't for luxury, it's for legacy. It's meant to build something meaningful, for him to learn responsibility, not depend on it. Ethan exhaled sharply. Yeah, well, guess I failed that part. There was a pause. I could see his eyes glisten, though he tried to hide it. He wasn't heartless, just blind. Blind to what love looked like when it wasn't dressed in convenience. He stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the ocean waves. You know, when Dad died, I didn't know how to deal with it. You kept talking about grief, healing, faith, but I didn't get it. I just wanted to move on. I know, I said quietly. That's what scared me the most. He turned back to me, his voice trembling now. So, what now? You've taken the inheritance, the house, everything. What do you want me to do? I want you to live, I said simply. Not off what your father left, but off what you build. He scoffed bitterly. That's easy for you to say. You had Dad. You had a home. I have debt and disappointment. You also have a chance, I replied. You can rebuild, Ethan. You're still young. You can still make something you're proud of without hurting people along the way. He didn't respond. Instead, he walked to the door, hesitated, and turned back to me. Can I come by again? Maybe start over? The words caught me off guard. For years, I'd imagined him saying something like that. An apology, a request to reconnect. But now that it was here, it didn't feel like victory. It felt fragile, like a seed that needed care to grow. Yes, I said finally, but this time you come as my son, not as my debtor. He nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill. Okay. When he left, I sat there in silence for a long time, replaying every moment. The anger, the hurt, the distance, and now, maybe, the start of something new. Over the next few weeks, Ethan began visiting occasionally, sometimes to talk, sometimes just to sit by the water with me. He didn't bring expensive gifts or excuses, just presence. For me, that was enough. One afternoon, while we were walking by the pier, he turned to me and said, I got a new job. Not as fancy as before, just accounting for a small firm. But it feels good. I smiled. I'm proud of you. He grinned weakly. Feels weird to hear that again. For the first time in years, I saw traces of the boy he used to be. Still, life wasn't perfect. There were days when old habits crept in, when he'd talk about money or status too much. But now, he caught himself. Progress, not perfection. One rainy evening, we were having tea when he asked, Mom, can I ask something personal? Of course. When you took the inheritance, what did you do with it? I mean, really? I chuckled softly. You mean besides surviving? He laughed nervously. Yeah. I leaned forward. I built a fund. Not for me, not for you, for single mothers who get left behind. It's called the Bennett Trust. Every month, it helps 3 women rebuild their lives. That's what your father's legacy became. He blinked, processing my words. You did all that? With my inheritance? With our family's inheritance, I corrected gently. Your father believed in responsibility. I just made sure it served its purpose. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, in a voice small and humbled, he said, You're incredible, Mom. I'm sorry it took me this long to see that. Tears welled in my eyes. But this time, they weren't from pain. You see it now. That's enough. He reached across the table and held my hand. I wish Dad could see us now. He can, I said quietly. Every time you choose kindness over pride, he's right there. Ethan smiled. And for the first time in years, it felt like family again. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Still, deep down, I knew healing was a process. Not a single moment. There would be setbacks, arguments, silence, but also laughter. Small acts of love and understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the water gold, I found myself whispering a prayer of gratitude for second chances, for forgiveness, for lessons learned the hard way. Life had taken so much, but it had also given me something back, peace. And I realized something profound. Sometimes we lose everything, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because only when your hands are empty can you finally receive what's real. Months passed, and life began to feel balanced again. Simple, but peaceful. Ethan visited every Sunday. We'd cook together sometimes, mostly small meals. He still couldn't chop an onion properly, but at least now, he tried. He told me stories from work, about his new boss, the challenges, the feeling of finally earning something by himself. There was a new tone in his voice, one I hadn't heard in years, humility. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found an old photo album. The edges were worn, the cover faded, but inside were the years that had built our family. Ethan at 5 missing his front teeth, his father lifting him up at the park, The three of us at the lake laughing so hard my stomach must have hurt. When Ethan came over that evening, I placed the album in front of him. "Do you remember these?" He smiled softly, turning the pages. "I used to love this trip. Dad caught a fish bigger than me. And you cried because you thought it was a monster," I teased. He laughed, and for a brief moment, we were back there, before ambition, before pride. Just a mother, a father, and their boy. After a pause, Ethan said, "I've been thinking a lot about Dad lately, about how he worked so hard for everything we had, and how I almost lost it all. Not just the money, but you." I reached across the table and touched his hand. "You didn't lose me, Ethan. You just needed to remember where home really is." He nodded, but his eyes looked heavy, as if carrying something unspoken. "Mom, there's something I haven't told you." I felt a small chill in my chest. "What is it?" He took a breath. "When you cut me off, I wasn't just angry. I was scared. I'd taken a big loan. I thought I could pay it off fast, but I couldn't. I almost lost my apartment. If it weren't for a friend who helped me out, I'd have been homeless." My heart sank, but I didn't interrupt. He continued, "I kept blaming you because it was easier than admitting I'd ruined my own life. I told myself you were cruel, but really, you saved me from going further down that path. Losing everything forced me to see what mattered." Tears burned behind my eyes. "Oh, Ethan." He looked at me with tears of his own. "I was so proud, Mom. Too proud to ask for help the right way. Too proud to admit I needed you, not your money." I stood, walked around the table, and hugged him. It wasn't a dramatic moment, just quiet, full of years of pain melting away. "We all make mistakes," I whispered. "The important thing is that you came back." After that night, Ethan started volunteering at the Bennett Trust. He met the women we helped, mothers trying to rebuild after loss, women with nowhere to go, fighting to stand again. One day, after a meeting with one of them, he said to me, "You know what's crazy? I used to think success was about owning things. But now, when I see these women smile after getting a job, that feels like real success." I smiled. "That's what your father wanted his legacy to be. Not wealth, but worth." He nodded, his eyes softer than I'd ever seen. "I get it now." Weeks later, I received a call from the city council. They wanted to honor the Bennett Trust for its community service. It was a small event, nothing extravagant, but they wanted to recognize the work. I didn't tell Ethan. I wanted it to be a surprise. The day arrived. I wore a simple blue dress and pinned my late husband's cufflink, the one he gave me on our 10th anniversary, to my lapel. When they called my name, I walked up, accepted the certificate, and spoke briefly. "This isn't just my achievement," I said into the microphone. "It's the legacy of a man who believed in kindness, and a reminder that sometimes, when we lose everything, we find what truly matters." I saw Ethan in the crowd then, standing in the back. His eyes shone with pride, and I knew he finally understood. After the ceremony, he walked up to me smiling. "You should have told me. I wanted you to see it," I said. "Not as my son, but as a man who helped build it." He looked down, then back at me. "You know, Mom, I think Dad would have been proud." "He is," I whispered. As we drove home that evening, the sky was streaked with orange and violet. That quiet time between day and night when everything feels still. Ethan turned down the radio and said, "Mom, I've been saving some money. Not much, but enough to start something. I was thinking about opening a small community accounting service to help low-income families manage their finances, like a way to pay it forward." My heart swelled with quiet joy. "That's a beautiful idea." He smiled. "It's your fault, you know. You turned me soft." I laughed. "No, you turned yourself human." That night, as I sat alone in my garden, the wind whispered through the trees. I thought about the years gone by, the love, the loss, the distance, and now, this fragile peace that had grown between us. I picked up my late husband's photo from the table. "He's learning," I said softly. "You'd be proud of him." The next day, Ethan came over with a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Just read it." Inside was a note. "For everything you taught me, Mom. for patience, strength, and love that never ran out. And attached was a small key. He smiled nervously. It's for a new office, the first Bennett accounting branch. I wanted to name it after Dad. And you. I blinked back tears. Oh, Ethan. He shrugged. You said legacy is about what we build for others, right? So this one's for you, and for everyone who helped me find my way back. I hugged him tightly. Your father's name lives on, and so does the lesson. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized how far we'd come, from broken words and slammed doors, to shared dreams and forgiveness. Sometimes, love doesn't come back as an apology. Sometimes, it comes back as a changed heart. And in that moment, watching my son smile again, I knew I hadn't lost him. I had found him all over again. The years after that were kinder. Ethan's accounting service grew slowly but steadily. He worked long hours, often coming home tired but fulfilled. He hired people from the same backgrounds as those we helped: single mothers, recovering addicts, young men who'd lost their way. He said, if someone hadn't believed in me when I was a mess, I'd still be lost. So I'll do the same for others. I'd visit his office sometimes, bringing coffee and sandwiches, pretending I wasn't tearing up every time I saw the big wooden sign on the wall. The Bennett Way: integrity, empathy, legacy. He made sure the plaque under it read, in honor of my parents, who taught me that true wealth is measured in hearts, not in accounts. Every time I saw it, I felt the years of pain soften, like they had been leading to this. One afternoon, I went there unannounced. Ethan was helping a young couple understand their finances, patiently explaining every detail. He had his father's calm tone, the same way of making complicated things sound simple. When the couple left, I walked up behind him and said, "You're turning into your father." He turned, smiling. "That's the best compliment you could ever give me." I looked around. The office wasn't fancy. A few desks, sunlight streaming through sheer curtains, the hum of people typing, but it was alive with purpose. "You built something good, Ethan," I said. He leaned against the desk, thoughtful. "You know, when I was younger, I thought you were overprotective. I thought you didn't trust me. But now, I understand. You weren't holding me back, you were holding me together." I smiled, fighting tears. "And now you're holding others." He took my hands in his. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me, for teaching me that failure isn't the end, it's a lesson." That evening, as I sat in my garden, the same garden that had seen so many lonely nights, I thought about the word inheritance. It used to mean money, property, papers signed in ink. But now, I realized the real inheritance was something else. The values we passed down, the resilience, the compassion. A few weeks later, Ethan invited me to a community dinner his team had organized. It was in the same old community hall where his father once used to volunteer. There were lights strung across the ceiling, laughter echoing, and the smell of roasted food everywhere. Ethan took the stage for a brief speech. He looked confident, his voice steady. "I used to believe my inheritance was something I'd lost," he began, glancing at me in the front row. "But I've learned that the real inheritance my parents left me was this: the courage to start over, the heart to forgive, and the will to make a difference. Money fades, but lessons last forever." The crowd clapped. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling the warmth of pride spread through me. After the dinner, as we walked outside under the cool night sky, Ethan said, "You know, Mom, I was thinking of expanding this project. Maybe open another branch in Dad's hometown. It feels right, like bringing the story full circle." "That's a beautiful idea," I said. "He'd love that." He smiled. "You'll help me design it?" "I'd love to," I said. We stood there quietly, watching people pack up chairs, laughter still lingering in the air. It was one of those rare, perfect evenings. Nothing grand, just real. When I got home that night, I looked around my small house, the same one I'd lived in for decades. The walls had seen everything: my husband's laughter, my son's anger, my own tears. And now, finally, peace. I sat by the window, a cup of tea in my hand, and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Sometimes, Life teaches its hardest lessons through heartbreak. Sometimes, you have to let something break to see what's truly worth fixing. My son once thought I was cruel for cashing out his inheritance early. But what he didn't realize was, I didn't take away his future. I gave him a chance to build one that mattered. And in the end, he did. Months later, he came over holding an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. He grinned. "Open it." Inside was a check, a significant amount, made out to the Bennett Trust Fund. I looked up in disbelief. "Ethan, what is this?" He smiled. "It's time I added to the family legacy. I've been saving. This is for you, for the next generation of mothers who think they've lost hope." My throat tightened. "Oh, Ethan, you don't have to." He interrupted softly. "I want to, because you once believed in me when I didn't deserve it, and now I want someone else to feel that same faith." Tears blurred my vision. I couldn't speak. I just reached for his hand and held it tight. That night, as I placed the check beside my late husband's photograph, I realized love never truly leaves. It changes, grows, and comes back in unexpected ways. My son had finally learned that inheritance isn't about what you're given, but what you create from what you've learned. And me? I'd learned that sometimes letting go isn't losing. It's trusting life to bring back what's meant to stay. The next morning, I woke up early, stepped out into the garden, and watched the first light of dawn. The roses were blooming again, delicate, radiant, alive. I whispered into the morning air, "We did it, love. He's finally found his way." And for the first time in years, my heart felt light. Not because I had regained what was lost, but because I'd finally understood what it meant to truly let go and to be found again.